Thank you for joining us again on another and very special episode of the Old Ways podcast. I am your storyteller or game master or handler or any title you'd like to loft upon me in this wonderful space. My name is Michael Diamond. My pronouns are he, him, and we are here as part of a kickoff and conversion event to the second season of Children of the Periphery. And we are going to be moving the game, as was previously announced to backers, to the Cypher system. And so, in that aim, what we're going to do is take our characters from Free League's Coriolis universe, and we're going to work to convert them to the Cypher system in the process. We're going to use the Cypher system character creator, the online tool that Monte Cook Games has put together, and we'll actually show you some of the bits and pieces about how those characters come together. We'll walk you through those steps. But before I do, I want to make sure that we get a chance to introduce our season 2 players and who they'll be playing. And so we're going to begin with introductions, which virtually will happen to my right.
Hi, this is Morgan, and I play Captain Amara Castra of the ship the Periphery, or sometimes known as the Sky Skimmer. And I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to season 2.
Fabulous. To Captain Amara's virtual right.
Hi, this is Rena. I play Tamarisk Anvari, ship's courtesan, and our pronouns are they, them. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next.
Yeah, undoubtedly. And to Rena's right.
Hello, this is Mare, pronouns she, her, and I am going to be playing a mystery. Ooh,
Yeah, so Mare is one of the cast, but is now here in season 2. So welcome aboard, as they might say, and watch your first step. Last but most certainly not least.
Hi, this is John. My pronouns are he, him, and I played Fida, who uses the same. In season 1, I was the Periphery / Sky Skimmer's mechanic, and we'll see how season 2 goes. If I wind up in the same role or something adjacent.
Right. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into the character version in a moment, but I kind of want to talk for a moment about the why, because I think the why is super important. As we heard at the end of season 1 of Children of the Periphery, which if you hadn't had a chance to check it out, I encourage you to do so, because it will have tendrils that will walk their way into season 2 for our characters. But at the end of season 1, our characters had assisted in the activation of a portal, a very large one, because of an impending and terrifying attack on something called the Darkness Between the Stars, which in the Coriolis setting is in this strange and perhaps not very well understood force of nature, force in space that sometimes plays a very critical role in the downturn or madness in the lives of people who live in the third horizon. And so they had activated a very large portal. They had jumped aboard an enormous seed ship, a ship called the Periphery, interestingly enough, and they had plunged through that portal as sort of our scene and season 1 closed. And while they haven't popped out on the other side yet, I'm certain that they will, without any unfortunate circumstances having befallen anyone in that crew. But what's really important is that as we move forward into season 2, they're not going to be within the third horizon anymore. And so the game is going to not only shed some of its skin when it comes to the setting, it's also going to do that when it comes to the dice system. So in this way, as a GM for the Cypher system, I will be hanging up the dice bag. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Cypher system, the GM doesn't roll any dice, which means I get the awesome job of just supporting the narrative and helping adjudicate the rules as necessary. It is going to be very much a player driven, and for our Patreon backers, which we'll talk about later at a later time, they're going to get a chance to drive some of the plots and some of the experiences that the characters will have as well. But when we talk about moving the game into the Cypher system, what we need to do is sort of set up the basics so that way our characters and our players understand what they're going to get built around. So when you go into the Cypher system tool set that they have that Monte Cook built, when you want to create a character, you're really going to define first what the campaign genre is. And so you could be something in a fairy tale or a modern environment or a post-apocalyptic environment. Based on the time of this video, I know that they're going to add more descriptor types in the future, but for right now, we're going to choose science fiction. So a genre really serves as sort of that overarching theme or setting for the game, right? It helps us create a framework based around what's going to happen in the story, and then that'll help us build just the guardrails in effect, right? It doesn't mean that we can't change them or transmute them later, but we're going to start in one. And so the big part of what's important about this for you, the listener, and for those of you playing the game is that the genre affects the available descriptors and foci that are available for characters built in that genre. So we'll go through, and I'll have all my players do it at the same time. We're going to select the science fiction genre. And so this is going to be able to cover everything from aliens to spaceships to energy blasters, perhaps mecha power armor, or something that you might have seen like in Warhammer 40K, or any number of fantastic pieces of technological revelations, right? So for this, we'll also be letting listeners know that we're going to be using the Stars Are Fire book for some of the descriptors that we'll end up using in some of the equipment that our characters can get a hold of. So we've selected the science fiction genre. And then from there, we have the opportunity to select a flavor of the campaign. So a flavor really allows us to alter a character type to make it more specific. So they have here listed in campaign flavor on the toolkit anything from combat to cozy magic to protection, stealth, skills, and knowledge. But for us, we're going to choose technology. So the technology flavor is going to allow us to recognize that we live in a high technological setting. Now, that could change based upon what planets our characters visit or perhaps who they interact with. But for the here and now, we want them to understand that they're going to have the ability to get high technological items as part of their gameplay. And those are, I think, some of the easiest analogs to our former Third Horizon game. But it's not just about the setting, it's really about the characters and the players. So, what I'd like to do is sort of go back to our players, and we'll start with Morgan and have her give us maybe one of her favorite science fiction shows that she's gotten a chance to watch or listen to, perhaps.
I mean, there hasn't been any science fiction shows I've ever watched. Ever. No. Favorite science fiction show? Probably has to be Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Okay. Okay. Star Trek: The Next Generation, certain, probably certainly a fan favorite for some. Any science fiction books that you've read, or perhaps movies?
Well, I mean, if we're going sci-fi for the movies, it'd have to be Star Wars because it's Star Wars and, you know,
Hmm.
yeah.
Okay. So move along then to our next player, Arena. Perhaps a few things that you might be interested in the
Mhm.
science fiction universe.
My favorite science fiction show is Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So continuing along with the Star Trek there, my favorite science fiction book is actually Star Wars Outbound Flight by Timothy Zahn, which feels kind of apropos to to what we're doing in this game. Not gonna lie, my favorite movie is if we count sci-fi horror would be Event Horizon.
Oh, we absolutely do count sci-fi horror. I think listeners in season 1 probably got a little flavoring of horror from some of the episodes that we dealt with. Okay, so moving on, Mayor.
Okay, so my favorite sci-fi TV shows are anything that aired on the Sci-Fi Channel between 2005 and 2009. But with a major focus on Battlestar Galactica, the series was very influential for me. But I also have an undying love for Stargate SG-1, Stargate Atlantis, any of those. Those were really formative to me as far as transitioning from being a medieval fantasy kind of gal into science fiction altogether. As far as movies, I've been really digging the new Dune ones. I'm really enjoying the massive scale that comes from that and the world building that took place in there. So yeah, so I those are my sci-fi things.
Nice. All right, John, lay it on us.
I'm. Oh, there we go. I guess for TV show, I'm going to go with Farscape because that one has a weirdly strong impact on me. I watched it in the evenings as a kid. I was like 12 years old, so like end of primary education. Um, although I won't lie, Mike recommended Scavenger's Reign. I have been getting that might displace it. That might kind of go. It's going to be between the two of those, I think. But in terms of books and movies, gosh, that is a big question. I'll give you 3 books that I think would kind of illustrate my taste. Hyperion by Dan Simmons. I thought that was a really good look into this very strange sci-fi world where all these planets are completely different. Solaris by Stanislaw Lem, because space is alien and might not be something a human being can understand. And for the third one, I am going to go with it's a series. It's the Pandora's Star series by actually, you know what? No, I'm not going to go with that one. I'm going to go with Joe Haldeman's Forever War.
Ooh.
Because that was the first book that I read that actually dealt with some of the weird practicalities and social implications of having space travel. And that one is still one I think about all the time.
Yeah.
Just go into space, time dilation happens, come back. 50 years has passed. For you, it was 2 months.
Right. Yeah, those are really great picks. So for our listeners and watchers, I would say that the Venn diagram, if we were to put one together for this game, is likely a varied few circles, but 3 of them for sure are going to be the Expanse, likely Dune, and then perhaps Alien, dependent upon how our characters make choices. But for me, as far as transformative stuff in the sci-fi realm, I'd probably look in the book field to something like Revelation Space by Alistair Reynolds, which is the start of a wild series that's a fantastic and interesting look at space travel and how time changes people and time changes places, and the sort of the effects of cryostasis in a really long-term trip. And other books might be the Star Trek DS9 book Fallen Heroes by Dafan Abhu, which is another time incident, but we get to see a couple of characters that would not normally be, quote, heroes, but have to do heroic things, which is always fun. And then certainly Hyperion's on my list. It's I think a foundational science fiction book, especially in this current era. And for television shows, I'm going to say Battlestar Galactica. So those are sort of the formative, foundational, and interest points for the crew here and their game master. So hopefully hearing some of those things has sparked some interest in you, the watcher or listener. You can feel free to comment on your faves here to let us know what you're aligned with. Okay. So getting back to the character generation, we have decided that our campaign flavor will be technology. As we roll forward, we're going to come up against really the first big choice that we make creating the characters. And that's going to be the character type that we're going to select. So there are 4 character types directly here on the character toolkit for building them. That's Adept, Explorer, Speaker, and Warrior. And certainly there are some analogs between this and parallels between this and what would be considered traditional classes. So when we shed the Coriolis system and its setting, we're also, I guess, compartmentalizing the characters a little bit more into structured boxes. And that's okay, I think, because we get a lot of choice within those boxes. I don't feel, as I've looked over the types, descriptors, and foci that we'll get into, I don't think that you're you don't lack in any choices as a player when you create them. The character type really is the core of the character, right? So it helps determines the character's place in the world and then the relationship with other people within the setting. Since the type is sort of the basis of what your whole character is built on, it's important for you, the player here, to consider how it relates to the chosen setting, right? So if someone selects warrior as a more of a martial character, I don't want you, the listener, or the player to think, okay, well, this person's going to run around in leather armor and they're going to have a sword, because obviously, with a sci-fi game and in a technology flavor, they're going to be a little bit more like, well, Master Chief maybe, or in that vein, right? And so that's something to think about too. So what I'd like my players to do here is we'll go through their choices. They've had a chance to look at the character builder a little bit before this recording, so I'd love to know from Morgan, who plays Captain Marakazra, where do you think the captain falls at?
I think she would fall under the explorer character type. Um, as we saw in season 1, she, takes action. She, is fairly fearless. And she really rallies for her crew. And she's not afraid of the unknown for the most part.
Well, and you, very importantly, in your character backhistory, have two parents who were archaeologists. There were
Yes.
explorers, and we know that from season 1, from those of whom listen, that is their location is still yet to be determined. Your parents are still missing, and that is something that can certainly come up in season 2. Okay, so explorer. So for your special abilities, you're going to get some things to look at and to select through. And I think Explorer is a fantastic choice for the captain. So now I'll roll over to Reno, who plays Tamarisk. And so for you, where did you feel that Tamarisk best fit at?
I think Tamarisk is definitely a speaker, good with words, good with people. According to the description, getting past challenges, out of difficult situations, getting people to do what I want, and understanding people. We saw in season 1, for example, they were able to settle Fida when he was having a freak out, get him to calm down, recenter, and refocus himself. They were able to tap into their understanding of who Fida was and what he needed, but also getting our pilot Icarus out of the jam for being inappropriately dressed. Let's say when we were going through the Citadel system, and being able to take charge of the situation, get the planetary security to listen to me, and to let us keep going, despite all the cultural taboos that were being broken. So I think Speaker really resonates with Tamarisk's personality and what they do in the crew.
Yeah, I'll add as well the social levers and understanding how to pull them when it came to setting up a blockade so that way the periphery could get through to get to where it needed to be is a huge feather in their cap, a show of their ability to massage and work social channels to get something that was desperately needed at the time. So I think Speaker is a fantastic choice. Okay, Mayor. I love this part because no one knows what you're playing. It is a big, big secret. And so I'm going to ask you to sort of unwrap a little bit of that secret here with your first selection. So for the character, which no one knows yet, what character type do you think they fit in?
This character fits very much into the warrior. This character is someone who is going to be, as it's described in here, a good ally to have in a fight, knowing how to defend, very much an initiator when things happen, not necessarily initiating in a this looks punchable kind of sense, but if something needs to get taken care of or needs someone to step forward, they're going to be a very action oriented, stepping up to the plate type of character. So the warrior seems to fit that a little bit more than the others.
Fantastic. Okay, to round us out then, John, when you think about FIDA and everything that FIDA went through in season one, a real wild series of changes in FIDA's life and even his very cellular structure, what character type do you think he fits into?
So I had to think about this a fair bit because Fida discovered so much about his his innate genetic abilities in some sense. I was very tempted to go. I was very tempted to go with an adept because he's got that whole side to him with the mysticism. But ultimately, I've gone with explorer because I feel like the idea of the adept is that you are trained and in control. Um, whereas Fida most certainly is not.
Right.
And I feel like the explorer is better suited to Fida's personality, where he is about using the tools at hand to get out of a sticky situation, because it's always a sticky situation, or avoid such a situation in the first place, if at all possible.
Mhm.
And that's why I've gone with explorer, because I feel like looking at the special abilities for that type, that suits the character that I think of as Fida, and like how I think he's going to react to to the world he's dealing with now in a much better way than Adept might have.
Okay, great. I think that's a good justification. I think you're right that it's likely the character could have gone both ways, but if the if it hinges on the character being in control of their power, then I agree with you. I don't think it's the fight his way. He's most certainly not in control of what's going on with his body.
I don't
at
think he's had a
genetic level.
choice, Mike.
No, and that's okay because sometimes that becomes something that can grow and can change, and we'll hopefully get a chance to see that as he explores this new place and a new setting.
Mhm.
Okay, so with all of our types sort of cast at this point, we'll move over to the next portion, which in the Cypher Tools online is their focus. So when you select a focus, really what it does is it's a way to help describe who the character is. And there are an awful lot of descriptors here, even, and this isn't, this focus list that we see here isn't even all of them that are available. They're just the ones that we've sort of hemmed down through because of the genre and the flavor of the game that we're running. And I think that is another huge credit to uh, the system that and setting that Monica Games has developed is there's a lot of pathways one could take. So as the character really progresses through it, they're going to get a chance to get more abilities based on their focus, right? So each tier inside of focus has certain benefits. So it is also going to be the way that they start their basic pools out. We'll talk about pools a little bit later, but they come from the focus that you have. So there's a lot to list here. We won't certainly go through all of the focuses that are available in this video, but really what it is at its core is how you would describe the character, because the grand sentence that makes up every Cypher system character is, I am a blank who blank, with this focus. I'm an adjective noun that verbs. That is really what it is. And for those of us who are perhaps literary or theater nerds, I love the idea of building with those blocks because I can just say this one sentence and you get the depth and breadth of the character based on that sentence. So we'll turn right back around to Morgan, who plays Captain Marakazra, and let's talk about the captain's focus.
Sure. Yeah, a lot of great choices on the list that I think would be applicable for Amara. Um, you know, y- there's a looks for trouble focus where you're a scrapper and loves a good fight, but that's not really. While it would be fun, um, Amara, I think I'm going with the learns quickly focus, which is you deal with bad situations as they arise, learning new lessons each time. That doesn't mean that not going to make bad choices as Amara. That just means I'll learn from them with some of and there's some really good skills in that focus. Um, Being a quick study, I'm hard to distract, which might be important as a captain in a high stress situation. Um, so that's the focus I'm going with.
Okay. Yeah, I think that just from your first tier, right, you're going to get more intellect pool, right? So your intellect pool is going to make those type of skill rolls and those challenges a little easier, depending upon how you use it. And then also too, because pools also reflect how resilient you are in those types of categories. So if you have a situation where your will is being tested, a high intellect is going to be helpful because you'll be able to expend more effort in those situations. We'll talk about effort as gameplay moves along. Okay, I love it. I absolutely love the choice. And so now because we'll get something totally different from Rena for Tamarisk, I want to know where you see them at.
So after discussing things with our wonderful GM, I've settled on, for Tamarisk, commands mental powers.
Mm.
So the description is you have honed the power of your mind to perform amazing psychic deeds. Being a courtesan and everything that Tamarisk had to do back in the Third Horizon required a lot of intense mental focus, a lot of training, a lot of sharpening their mind and their skills. And I like the idea that something in the traversal to the next horizon wakes something up inside them that they didn't know they had, but that was waiting there based on all the skills that they've learned and everything that they've brought together over the last few decades of their life.
Yeah, I think that I think when we take a look at what's happening, this jaunt through what is effect a portal or the folding of space and time, I think there's a lot of things that could potentially go wrong. But I also think that there's intrinsically, in that same sense, there's a lot of things that could fundamentally change for the good. And I like the idea of a transition like this, the possibility for a character to sort of flip their own internal script and be something or grow into something or awaken into something different is a perfect opportunity to change the facing of the character and perhaps play into something that was always there just under the surface, or a revelation that they have within the transitional period, and then they awaken to a different person. So that's a lot of fun. Okay, so Mare, we'll continue to open the secret present a little bit and talk about focus. Now, as a warrior character type, your focus choices are going to be in that vein. So where did you see this character blossoming into?
So I have selected, there were quite a few that looked like they would fit, but this one just calls to me deep down and I'm really excited for it. So my character's focus is wears power armor. So I have a built-in or acquired a set of powered armor that gives me some additional feats that would be happening there, especially focusing on might and just some features that might allow for us to move beyond the standard non-power armored self. You know, different things that might come in handy.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the idea that we have the ability then to move into not only just the warrior character type, but also someone who has a pretty heavy piece of defensive armor if necessary to get in front and be that guardian for folks who don't. And I think that that is fun. I think we've seen in both TV and movies, and even read in books, that power armor can be an awful lot of fun. And I look forward to seeing what you do with this power armor as the show progresses. Okay. So knowing that now, John, how does Fida look at the focus that he has?
I was kind of torn going down through all of them because almost like there's a few that obviously don't suit him, but then I got down to talks to machines,
Mm.
and that was the focus of all of his weird abilities from last season. So I think that's a pretty good one to go with. It the guy can open the door from a distance away. It counts. It's something he's already done. It's something he's still kind of grappling with. And no, I think it's just an excellent one in general for him. I do feel like when the series started, he was works for a living, but now he's talks to machines, and he's kind of got to accept that about himself.
Yeah, all those chats with Rakam as the ship's artificial intelligence talks to machine. The focus: you use your organic brain like a computer, interfacing wirelessly with any electronic device. You can control and influence them in ways others can't.
And there's some of the things in there, like distant interface and the machine affinity, which I think suit him down to the ground. Because for anyone that didn't listen to season 1, Fida has a very strong relationship to whatever vessel he's in. He understands them in a way most engineers and mechanics don't. And I feel that affinity is the thing that really got me over to being like, no, this one.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
yeah.
In machine affinity for you in that tier is basically makes you trained. And as we get into sort of the more dice system stuff later on, and in the show, being trained in a skill makes roles easier, which is kind of right in line with Okay. So if we have taken our character type and we have moved on from that, we are going to get the opportunity now to select a descriptor. So the descriptor is what really defines your character. And if you're using the tool to create a character in the Cypher system, up at the top, you're going to see right across the top that we're almost done with the sentence that is our character, right? So right now you should have descriptor sort of in brackets, and then your type, and then eventually your focus. So the descriptors offer also a one-time package of abilities and skills or modifiers to stat pools. So this really is sort of the extra juice here that your character is going to get as you build them. So I'd like to get an idea, Morgan, where Captain Khazra's descriptor lands at.
Oh, but there's so many good ones. There's a lot. I found my own personal descriptor there. Virtuous. No, it's not. That's not my descriptor. It's more like weird, which is at the bottom. But so many good ones. I think though I am going to go with brash for Captain Amara Castro. I feel like that really just encompasses who she is. I thought clever I was kind of leaning towards clever. But I think I can also be brash and quick-witted. I think that still can be encompassed in that descriptor. Um, so I I like both. I mean, I'm really if I could have both, that would be wonderful. But I think I'm going to go with brash, um, which was also a recommendation from our, local friendly GM, Michael Diamond.
It's just how I see the character, right? So I agree that one of the great things about Captain Khazra in the first season is that she's rarely ever directly intimidated by just about anything. She has a
Well,
very forceful way of doing things. And I think that's important as a ship's captain. It's just something she learned over time and brought to the character in season 1. And I love that the brash descriptor gives you that first portion, which is bold. You're trained in all actions that involve overcoming or ignoring the effects of fear and intimidation, which basically means that you're going to immediately lower your target number by 1, which is hugely helpful. You're also trained in initiative, which means if someone needs to go first, it's very likely that you're going to be the one going first. We get that sort of Han Solo shoots Greedo energy from the brash descriptor. And then they give you 2 extra points to your speed pool, which is nice because who doesn't need more in their speed pool? Okay. I like brash. I mean, I agree with you. You could probably settle on 5 different ones within that choice, but that's who you are. So now that you've selected that descriptor, what does the top of your line look when you arrow forward in the tool? Can you give us the full sentence?
I sure can. It's brash explorer who learns quickly with a technology flavor.
Okay, cool. All right, Tamarisk. Rena, how do you see Tamarisk's descriptor playing out?
I've actually been torn between 2. There's strong-willed, which is very much the mental toughness, resolve. You can't change my mind. You can't make me do anything that I don't want to do. But also just reinforces how strong-willed they are, which makes a lot of sense for them. But there's also the empathic, which lines up with being able to read people, to understand social cues, to understand the cues that people are giving off, being able to read them super well. Telling mood, disposition, and so on, which would make a lot of sense with what they've had to do for their entire career so far. So I've actually been kind of torn between those 2. And what I was thinking of going with empathic.
Okay. So I think it's an interesting choice. I don't disagree with the choice. I think it's one that would definitely fit the character. I think it's also interesting that you, at that point too, pick up an inability. So that's something within the Cypher system that is sort of the opposite of a trained skill. Is you're going to pick up an inability, which is because you're so receptive, because you're so good at reading people and understanding their cues, you have to be open to do that. You can't do that behind a closed wall, and that does make you a little bit more vulnerable to something that attacks your mind, and so you'll become hindered on some of those intellect defense rolls, and that's okay. Because of the payoff for you is multiple skills, and you also get 4 points to your intellect pool, which gives you a lot of bonuses when it comes to that pool. Yeah, I like it. Take the risk. That's what I say.
Yep, we like risks.
Yeah,
they're fun.
We love risks. Risks are so much fun. Okay, so Mare, for your character, when you look at the breadth of what you have to choose from, where do you feel the character lines up at?
So, feeling out this character at first, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go full, like, meathead military, but instead, I was really taken with the term beneficent. So, I really like that this character, as opposed to just being, let's go in, instead, they've got a lot more of their why is built into their what. So, like, why they're doing it is definitely a part of what it is. So, for beneficent, it's saying that helping others is your calling. It's why you're here. So, you're at your best when you're aiding people, either by explaining how they can best overcome it or demonstrating it themselves. So, a lot of the features within this, a lot of the abilities that go along with it are aiding folks, taking partial damage, generally just kind of being like, look out. But in hearing you talk about that inability, it says, while you're alone, all intellect and speed tasks are hindered. So please, I am not a smart cookie. I will stand in the way. You just tell me where to punch.
Yeah, I think that's one viewpoint you could take on it. I think my view of your inability is that because the character is essentially like the centerpiece of synergy, you work best when other people are around where you can help them and you can see them grow. And so when you're all by your lonesome, you don't operate as well because you don't have anybody to hang out with. you're an extrovert in power armor.
I
So
just want to have friends. Just because
yeah,
I'm in big, scary, meaty armor doesn't mean that I can't have friends. I
right.
can pick you up and carry you on my shoulder. It'll be fun.
Which totally plays out in the skill that Beneficent gives. You're trained in all tasks related to pleasant social interaction, putting other people at ease, and gaining trust. Right?
Yeah.
Look past the enormous power armor that probably runs on like some sort of weird fusion core.
Got like some strange nuclear thing at my chest, but just
Right.
it just you get used to the humming over time.
Yes, unlicensed particle accelerator on your back. So certainly, I'm sure it'll be fine.
Mhm.
I think it's great. I think there's so many things that I can see from the character so far that are going to be just really fun to play out in season 2. Okay, so John, for FIDA, bring us home. Where is FIDA's descriptor? What does it look like?
FIDA is mechanical.
Hmm.
There was one line in the description that sold me, and it was this. Perhaps you're a bit of an inventor, creating new machines from time to time. You get called techie, tech, mech, gearhead, motorhead, or any number of other nicknames. And I'm like, FIDA is the type of guy who will spend a week tuning an engine. He is that guy who just wants to be hands-on and elbows deep in just mechanical machinery, hooking it up to the electrical systems. I mean, it's kind of how he got into this mess in the first place. But yeah, I feel like that one describes him to a T. Where it's just like, this is, if I must pick one thing, this is it.
Okay. Yeah, I like that too, especially because that specific descriptor is going to give you a wide breadth of skills that you'll be able to use and utilize trained. All right. So for those of you who haven't played Cypher System before, there isn't really a per se set skill list. It's really sort of agreed upon what makes sense. And so as you get trained in a wide variety of skills, this gives the player the opportunity to say, yeah, I'm trained in this, so I think this applies here. And we'll get into the idea as the gameplay moves forward about the discussion of how target numbers are resolved back and forth, the conversation that happens where the GM sets a specific difficulty and the player says, well, this is how I'd like to approach it. Here are the assets or the abilities that I have that are going to lower that target number to make it easier for me. We'll get into all that, but they will apply for a character like Fido, who is now will have a wide breadth of mechanical and repair skills. Certainly, you'll get a chance to help out someone who might have power armor, who maybe needs that to make sure they have what they need.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, what's that? You got all these pneumatic pistons? Well, guess what? Those pistons are prone to leaking and just stop working then. So
You bet.
also, we're gonna have to paint like a little Hello Kitty or something on your chest.
Oh, I half of me has like the thought that it's full of stickers, but we'll get there when we get there.
Sick.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so when you have all those locked in, the character toolkit online is going to give you the option to select a second descriptor. But kids, we're not doing that. You're just getting one descriptor. So that's okay. Perhaps another time.
I get
Or
so excited. I was like, there's the second descriptor for no. Okay.
yeah, I think for this run through, one descriptor is probably enough. I'll say this, I won't necessarily close the door on it because I think it could be fun as a way to explore different portions of the character as they advance. But I think one descriptor is more than enough. And then at that point, we'll move on to abilities. So in abilities, you're going to get a chance to select abilities for your character based upon, based upon the character type that they are. So what I'd like to do is have you go through and select those abilities. And then we'll sort of wrap back around and we'll talk to Morgan again about what she feels Captain Amara's abilities would be.
You want me to tell you now?
If you are ready.
I'm trying to remember. I did this like 3 times and I didn't download my PDF, so here I am.
I knew you'd work ahead.
But I can't remember what I picked, so it doesn't matter. Hello, brain. I'm brain to brain. Okay. I think I would like to pick one of the abilities will be knowledge skills. So then
Mhm.
I'll be trained in 2 skills in which I'm not already trained, which I think would be helpful in our new foray into the darkness or wherever we might going. Maybe there's light
Into the unknown.
into the I can sing that. Not right now.
I mean, you can if you'd like to. I'm sure the folks in the video would like to hear you sing.
No, they don't. And then I think I also pick danger sense
Mhm.
as one of my abilities. I think as, a captain, she should have a good feeling of the world around her or the worlds and the darkness.
Mhm.
Oh, hang on, my clicking. I added it. Just making sure that it's doing what it needs to. And then I think I would also pick surging confidence, which allows me when I use an action to make my first recovery roll today, I immediately gain another action.
Yeah, great choice. I
And then
think we'll get a chance to talk about recovery rolls and what they mean for your pools a little later, but being able to um, immediately gain another action, super helpful.
And then the last one I would do is probably pick physical skills for some hand to hand or actually I take that back. I am going to pick practiced with all weapons.
Yes. Practice with all weapons. And you become practiced with light, medium, and heavy weapons and stuff for no penalty when using any kind of weapon. That's sort of a huge catch-all. And that could be super helpful. I think it's also telling too that it would likely overcome weapons which might not be natively human. And
Right.
so you could pick up some weird alien rifle and just start using it, which happens all the time in the movies. People just instantly know how to use a weapon that they have no basis or form of ever seeing before.
I mean, Mike, if you can't pick up an alien species with a completely different background's weapon and know where the safety switch is, I mean, maybe aliens don't have safety switches.
Maybe. Okay, so really
Maybe
quick.
they just have very poor gun safety.
Right.
I mean, but you have to remember that every planet we go to, everyone's also going to speak our exact same language too. So they could just tell us where the
Oh,
safety
my
is.
sweet summer child. That is not the way things will go in this universe. There's no way.
Oh,
No way.
well,
That
you
is
mean it's not a sci-fi world where everything looks a little bit like Vancouver, Canada?
And every
no.
planet has one biome.
Right. Everything is Vancouver, Canada. No, but that is what you have Tamarisk for. So Morgan, if you've listed all 4 of them, just give them in quick succession for us.
Sure. I picked danger sense, knowledge skills, practiced with all weapons, and surging confidence.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. So Rena, for Tamarisk, when you make
Mhm.
your selection for abilities, where do you land at?
Well, speaking of everyone being able to understand us completely anywhere in the universe, the first one I took is Babel. So after hearing a language spoken for a few minutes, I can speak it, make myself understood. If I keep speaking it with other people who speak that language, within a few hours, I'll essentially be a native speaker. So really helpful, I hope, in wherever it is we end up. But languages definitely can be useful. The second one I picked was encouragement, which is giving inspiring oration or talking to people. My allies within short range, ease one of the following task types: defense, attack, or related to skill. I choose which one it is, so I can make things easier for people by giving a speech or telling a story, essentially, which can be helpful when we're in situations that I'm not very good at, like combat. So, I can still be useful. Uh, a fun one is erase memories.
Mm.
So I can reach into the mind of a creature in immediate range and on a successful roll, erase up to the last 5 minutes of memory, which probably could have been useful in a few situations that we were dealing with back in season 1.
Oh yeah.
So I thought that might be an interesting one to roll with. And the last one is interaction skills, which I get trained in 2 skills I don't already have. So things like deception, persuasion, public speaking, etc. I guess we'll get to that picking those skills, but I'll get 2 extra skills there.
Fabulous.
Mhm.
Yeah, a nice broad brushstroke there of a lot of different abilities to back up some of the things you have, and then also, I guess, some of them like the ability to erase memory, sort of almost a panic button. Let's reset the conversation and
Flashy thingy.
right, try this again. But that didn't go very well. Hang on, let's talk to this card again. Okay, great. So, Mayor, any idea what sort of abilities you'll be picking?
Yes. I have 3, and then I'm stuck between 2 for my 4th one.
Okay, so let's get the first 3.
The first 3 I've got combat prowess, so that I can add +1 damage to one type of weapon attack of my choice, melee or ranged, and it has enabler on the end of it. Don't know what that means, but I'm sure we'll find out. I also took no need for weapons, so that when you make an unarmed attack, such as a punch or a kick, it counts as a medium weapon instead of a light weapon. I figure that makes sense if I'm wearing power armor. That seems like it would hurt a lot. And then we've got Overwatch. So you used a ranged weapon to target a limited area, such as a doorway, and make an attack against the next viable target. This works like a wait action. So you negate any benefit that they would have had from cover, position, surprise, and you inflict 1 further damage. So you can kind of hold the door and keep from bad things happening. So the
Mhm.
last 2 that I'm thinking about, and this is just kind of fun flavoring with the power armor, would be one of the technology skills, whether or not it would be data jack or machine interface. Data jack allows you with computer access, you jack in instantly and learn more about something that you can see. You get an asset on a task involving a person or an object. Machine interface. Yeah, machine interface has for 1 minute you gain an asset on tasks to discern the level, function, activation of technological devices you touch. So I just figured like it would be really cool, right? It'd be really cool if like in my hands, like it just then like I can like jack into something
Mhm.
and get cool info on a heads-up
Yeah.
display. That's just those are thoughts.
So both of them are assets, and what assets do for you are lower target numbers, right?
Oh,
So
cool.
it's a piece of equipment. A data jack is essentially a piece of equipment, or a machine interface would be in that way to help you lower the target number of being able to get into things. It would also be a lot of fun narrative flair depending upon how the data jack or the machine interface is set up. How does it work? That is something that we could get into and talk about. Well, where does it come from? Does it come from their neck or from their head, or does their
Mhm.
hand and forearm totally transform? Or
It comes from the elbow. Just kidding. I don't know yet, but I just think, I think that being a part of the power armor or something built in like that, or whether or not it was a cybernetic, I don't know how deep we are into anything within it. I just think that would be useful. So I'm still again like stuck between whether or not that gets an asset involving a person or object, or whether or not to like discern things about technological devices that we touch. So that's kind of where I'm stuck. Do you have any thoughts?
sure, I think that it's likely more, given the character's background, likely more probable that a data jack would be in their future rather than something that is more like body transformative, just
Mhm.
based upon the technology level that existed when the character was not in cryo.
Mhm.
But I think it's a fantastic potential asset for you to interface with things with.
Great. So going with data jack instead of machine interface then. Okay. I'm down with that. So that gives me combat prowess, no need for weapons, Overwatch, and data jack.
Fabulous. Okay. So John, talk to us about Fida's abilities.
Mike, I have one question before I fill in the last one of these. Are we counting spacesuits as armor?
Technically, yes.
Okay, in that case, give me 2 seconds. So, Fida has 4, which are endurance, practice at armor, tech skills, and tinker. Endurance because we've seen Fida in season 1 being able to take a lot of damage, and he takes a licking, keeps on ticking as best he can. Practice in armor because, you know, he has worn like a little power loader before, and he's done that work in space, on the outside of the hull, or when we were gathering rocks that one time. For tech skills, I was kind of looking at, basically because I can choose 2 of the following: crafting, computers, identifying, machines, piloting, repairing, or vehicle driving.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of like, look, I know I'm going to have a handful of skills anyway, but I figure I'd like to be able to just widen the array of things he can do a little bit more. And Tinkers is something that I did a bunch in season 1 with him, and you make a device do something different from its original purpose. For example, a blaster becomes a bomb. A scanner becomes a signal booster for a radio transmitter,
Ooh.
which is very useful to be able to do. A music player becomes a battery for another device. The effective level of the modified device is 1 lower than normal, and the device is rendered unusable for its original purpose until repaired.
I love it.
Yeah. So I'm just like, cool. And like the endurance, the way that works is basically the amount of time the average person can do something, I can do it twice as long. So, yeah. If they can hold their breath for 30 seconds, I can hold mine for 60. If they can, you know, if a poison takes 8 hours to pass through their system, mine passes in half the time. If they can, I mean, one of the examples is if a person can march for 4 hours without stopping, you can do so for 8 hours. In terms of harmful effects, if a poison paralyzes its victims for 1 minute, you are paralyzed for 30 seconds. The minimum duration is always 1 round. And I think with all of the weird stuff his body has been through, Fida might have just become a bit more adapted to all that stuff in terms of physical abuse and like what he can take and keep on going. So yeah, I think those 4 sum up the guy I've got in mind.
Great. Okay, so when you advance the character toolkit forward, what you're going to see is a space for you to fill in skills. Some of you probably have skills that are available to you. That, as again, it's important to remind folks who are listening, the Cypher system has no defined list of skills, right? They give you a list here on the toolkit to spark your interest and potentially spark thoughts. So if you have skills that need to be entered, that's for all the players here, you'd want to make sure that you enter them now. And then we won't pause too long as far as your skill choices here, because what we need to eventually get to is moving forward on the generator. We'll move past power shifts. You guys are not going to have any power shifts. Those are specifically for post-human abilities. I want to keep them a little reined in at this point, but it doesn't mean, again, that we couldn't potentially come back as part of the system and assign you a power shift, right? So that is something that with XP you could potentially unlock and do extra special things with. And I think that'll be fun to see as the show develops. What we need to do is get to assigning your pool points. So after your skills are entered, after you've prepared those, you'll eventually click forward on the gray arrow and come to how many pool points you have to assign. So there are 3 spots where you can collect pool points at, and that's might, speed, and intellect. Those make up the specific attributes of the system. So you have a select number of starting pool points, right? And then you have so many that you get to assign. You have a standard single point of edge. We'll sort of talk about that a little bit in a moment, but you get a single point at start. So the idea here is to try to get a gauge and a sense of where our characters' pools are at as they start play. So you can compare the pool stats between two creatures and get an understanding in basis of how they differ. So a character who has a might pool of 16 is, in a very basic sense, stronger than a character who has a might pool of 12. Most characters start with a pool in the range of 9 to 12, and that's sort of your average range. When you get injured or when you get attacked, you're going to lose points from those pools. The nature of the attack is really going to determine which pool you lose points in. So physical damage from a sword is going to reduce your might. A poison that makes you clumsy might reduce your speed, or a psionic blast from your courtesan might deduct your intellect pool. We're not foreshadowing, I promise. You can spend points from those pools from one of your stat pools to decrease a task's difficulty, right? So this is sort of what effort does. And you can rest and recover those lost points from a stat pool. We get intervals that we're allowed to recover pool points in. Edge, specifically, is a fairly important stat. And that's when something requires you to spend points from a stat pool, your edge reduces the cost of that spend, right? So it also reduces the cost of applying effort to a roll. So as the character descriptor goes through here, for example, let's say you have a mental blast ability and activating it costs 1 point from your intellect pool. Subtract your intellect edge from the activation cost, and the result is how many points you must spend to use it. If your edge reduces that cost to 0, you can use this ability for free. And so you can see where edge might be very useful, especially long term, if you're in a protracted scene or a series of scenes and you're worried about your pool points being expended. So edge can be different for each stat. So you could have an edge of 3 in one stat, an edge of 1 or 0 in another. It's really all about how it reduces you spending points. A character who has a low might pool but a high might edge has the potential to perform might actions consistently better than a character who has a might edge of 0. Because again, that edge is all about reducing the cost of the spend that you have to make to do those abilities. So as characters level up or they go up in tiers in the system here, you do have the ability to get more edge. And that is what consistently makes those higher tier characters just that much better than everyone else around them, because they have to spend less points to do things. It's sort of like having more spoons, a lot more spoons, and then you can just keep doing things. Not everybody has that. So once you're ready, Morgan, I'd like to know where Captain Kazra's pools are, might, speed, and edge, and then where your, just sort of where she sits.
Sure. And then do you want me to break it down by where I put my points?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Give me also how many pool points you had to spend.
Sure. So initially, I have in my pools, I have a 10 in might with 1 edge, an 11 in speed with 0 in edge, and then 12 in intellect with, again, 0 in edge. I have 6 pool points to assign. And ideally, I am going to probably put at least a couple more in might, because she's a little low in the strength section there. So um we don't want to bulk her up like Halo style, but she should be able to at least hold her own.
Sure.
No, we have Mare's going, you know, Halo style. Yes, yeah, just my protector. So I'm gonna put a couple points in there. Um, I mean, honestly, what I could do is just spread it evenly across the board and give 2 in each pool. But her intellect really should be higher than um probably the highest pool that she's got to me. But
It's your
um
character, so
it is. But you know what? I'm gonna put 2 in speed and then 2 in intellect, but because it's still and then at the end, I will have, 12 in might, 13 in speed, and 14 in intellect.
Okay.
So, just, for the listeners and for myself, at the end of character creation, where do they like to see the pools at, typically?
I think it varies based on the character that you're making,
Okay.
right? So I have seen Cypher characters, I would just say, sort of sell out for their intellect pool because they know that their character is, say, a mentalist or a scion or something like that. And they know that they're going to draw from their intellect far more often than they would any other stat. If they're standing in back of the quote party during a altercation and all they're doing is mind blasting everything, then yeah, they're going to want to make sure they have their intellect pool high because eventually they're going to spend points from it. It all depends on how you see the character. What I see is Captain Kazra is fairly well balanced. She's average or better in every one of her pools. And where she wins out at the end of the day is having that force of will or strength within to sort of continue to keep going. So it seems very well in line with what we saw in season 1 and what we'll hopefully see in season 2 when it comes to playing in the Cypher system. So, yeah. And then, Rena, with Tamarisk, where did you decide to go with pool points? And
So I started with 8 in might, 9 in speed, 15 in intellect, and then 1 edge on intellect. I have 6 points to assign. I'm going to put 1 each in might and speed and then dump everything else into intellect because I think that makes the most sense for how this character's been built and what they'll be doing. So having the high intellect pool, I think, like what you were saying with what you're going to be using the most, that makes the most sense to me for Tamarisk.
right. Yeah, I agree. And then the thing to understand, obviously, is that with a might pool where you're at or a speed pool where you're at, if there are specific attacks that focus on those abilities, they will be far more riskier for you to engage with because you'll know that your pool is not very high. So Tamarisk, as we know, is not a physical character. And so that shines through in the Cypher system where if they were to get into a physical altercation, it's very likely they would be on the losing end.
They've managed
although,
a successful fight thing once, and it was a fluke. And
right,
they don't want to get back into that if they can avoid it.
right, absolutely, absolutely, I love it. Okay, so Mary, talk us through your pool points and show us how you broke things down.
Okay, so for me, it started off with 13 in might, 10 in speed, and 8 in intellect. And I just went ahead and did 2 across the board because I was pretty satisfied with how each of those looked and the scaling for that. Um, so yeah, with might, that puts her now at a 15 for might, a 12 for speed, and a 10 for intellect. And I was trying to decide whether or not to throw my edge over into might or to put it into intellect to kind of uh you know, Hail Mary anything if needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'll have to make that decision at some point, but that's okay. And then John, with Fida's pool and his edge, where did you end up at?
Yeah, Fida's edge goes into might because it comes from his explorer initial might edge. So that's the only one he has. That's where it goes. It's designated to start with. I started with a might of 10, a speed of 9, and an intellect of 11. And I've wound up with spending my 6 points, 14 might, 9 speed, and 13 intellect. Because Fida is a big boy, but he's not necessarily a speedy boy. But he is pretty quick-witted and pretty smart. So I feel having that little slightly below average in speed kind of works out in like how I've always imagined him anyway. And yeah, so he's 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 pretty good with his mind in his hands. Don't ask him to do anything in a hurry though.
Fair enough. Yeah, he's about exacting work, not about quick work.
Yeah, exactly.
So I get that. All right. So if we
I have
finish
to
up,
make a correction. I'm
Oh.
so sorry.
no,
I
that's
didn't
okay.
read the things, but if you read the things, it tells you where you're supposed to put it. So I need to put my edge either into might or speed. I can't put it in intellect. Womp womp. So cool. I will be putting that into probably might.
Okay.
Okay. There. Sorry.
Sounds
Just
good.
thank you.
No, it's good. It's I'm sure that people out there will appreciate knowing where you put it. That's important. So when we click forward on the toolbox, the Cypher System Toolbox Character Creator, we're going to see that we have our final character details screen. You'll be able to give them a name. We will have your name, and then there's this box below that'll say equipment. And so for the here and now, we're not going to have you fill the equipment part out. It won't be necessary for folks to see your equipment. And then money, since we are leaving sort of a hyper capitalist sci-fi society and going into the unknown, we won't put any money in because none of you have any.
But we also don't have any debts, Mike. So that,
That is true.
We escaped the company town.
You did.
Ooh, no more
So
getting paid in script.
yeah, that's the thing there. Yeah, no massive debt to be broadcasted over the intercom anymore, which is, I thought a nice touch. So we'll complete our character sheets, and then what we'll do is I'll have you all hit that big create button. It'll come up on the next screen with your character sheets. We're going to export them as PDF. And then what I'm going to do in this video is sort of, you'll see it dim here, and then we will show you a scroll through of every single character sheet that is going to be part of our cast for season 2. So we'll go through Captain Amara Kazra, we'll see Tamarisk's sheet, and then we'll see the mysterious character that Mare is playing, who is to be named shortly. And then to wrap things up, we'll see Vida, as played by John. So other than that, that is our 4 characters. That is the transition from Free League's Coriolis to Monte Cook Games Cypher System. We'll be using the revised set of rules here, and then also the Stars of Fire as our books, at least for now. There may be the opportunity for us to add in other, what we would call white books here, as the characters experience and see things and encounter different societies. So that's all I have for you at this point. And I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been educational. Please let us know in the comments below which character you enjoyed hearing about the most. And we'll see you amongst the stars very soon. Thank you.